This is what happens when you draw a line in the sand. You don't deliver, bad guys just kick sand right back in your face. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto, and incredible. Ever since President Obama threatened Syria over chemical weapons and did nothing, it has been all downhill since. I really think this whole implosion in Iraq, this whole explosion in oil prices, goes back to that moment that evil called the president's bluff. I really do. Because ever since the president failed to act on what he said, nuts the world over were very happy to do whatever the hell they want. It would have been better had he said nothing at all. Better no threat than an empty threat, because when it's an empty threat, bad guys happily fill the void. Just look at Bashar al-Assad in Syria. Do you think that guy is cowering? No, he is flooding the insurgent movement in Iraq. And look at Vladimir Putin. Think he didn't take note of the president's lack of follow-through in Syria? Just look how he laughed off our threats over the Ukraine. So let's recap. Assad, stronger. Putin, stronger. Al-Qaeda, stronger. Taliban, stronger. Insurgents, stronger. Us, weaker. Now, I am not laying all this on the president. I am saying we'd all be better off had he just shut his mouth as president, because there is only one thing worse than a paper tiger, spouting meaningless words that aren't worth the paper they're printed on. So to review, we have no money, we have no moxie. Keep going, Mr. President. At this rate, we might have no country. Now, that's what I think. Let me know what you think. Use hashtag Cavuto to let me know your thoughts. We'll share them on air. To the former Army Vice Chief of Staff, 4-star General Jack Keane. General, I don't mean to overstate, but that's how I see it. That once you look like you're not going to follow through, we're through.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right about that. The larger strategic issue, which is certainly impacting the Middle East, is simply the fact that this administration has made a policy decision, unstated to all of us, and that is to disengage from the Middle East. And it's driving their policy. They believe the Iraq war was bad. The Afghanistan war took too long, and they want to do anything that would ever get us involved again in the Middle East. The problem with that strategy is we have to stay engaged in the Middle East. Otherwise, the radical Islamists are all in, and they will take advantage of that policy, and they have been doing that in Libya, in Mali, in Yemen, in Syria, and now in Iraq.
So would airstrikes, General, change the equation? If we were to conduct a bombardment campaign of these insurgent strongholds, would that really change anything? Too little, too late?
Oh, yeah, it would have quite an impact. You know, for our viewers to understand, from a military perspective, this is a terrorist organization, ISIS, which is now conducting conventional operations, which makes them very vulnerable to us. So they're organizing in groups of 500. They come down a highway as a road of access in vehicles, one behind the other, in daytime only. And that exposure to us, in terms of dealing with that using either unmanned drones or manned aircraft, would be relatively simple to deal with. They also would be very vulnerable to us in their staging bases. I would not limit the airstrikes against them to just Iraq. I would strike them in Syria out of their staging bases and where they're on the move there as well, if we were able to get those targets. All that said,
I seriously doubt that's going to happen, though, General, don't you? I mean, if you're right on this, and I think you are, about the proclivity on the part of this administration to disengage from this region. The president, you know, was against the war in Iraq to begin with. It would be counterintuitive for him to go against what he felt strongly in the first place. So he's been pulling out, even against advisors' wishes, and that they keep some troops back in Iraq. That's emboldened this behavior right now. Do you think he actually cares?
I don't know. I mean, by his actions, I don't think he really cares much about Iraq. I mean, that had all to do with why we left no forces there to assist and influence the Iraqi government. That is why he pulled away from Maliki, who's a nefarious character at best and needed to be guided in the political reconstruction of his country, but we chose to do none of that. The fact of the matter is the speech today that he made, I'm hoping that he's making some deals and plans with Maliki in terms of military assistance to him. But
wouldn't that draw out the agony,
yet.
General? I'm sorry, sir, but wouldn't that just draw it out? I mean, we might be able to stave off this advance for a little while, but the writing is on the wall. A lot of people cynically say this is going to be another Vietnam, and we're just waiting for the helicopter moment. What do you think?
No, I mean, this is a relatively simple military operation. We've got less than 4,000 of these guys in Iraq. This is not hard. They're making it vulnerable to us. They're not in terrorist
you've got Iraqi soldiers, government soldiers, who are dropping their guns at the sight of them coming, and they outman and outgun them 3, 4, 5 to 1.
Well, I agree with that. But the fact of the matter is, when it gets closer to Baghdad, there's going to be more Shia militia involved. And the fact of the matter is also, if we use some air power to help, it's incredible psychological weapon. After all, what is really happening here, ISIS has broken the will of the Iraqi military. And that's the ultimate objective of war, break your opponent's will. To reverse that, air power can assist. I'm not saying it can be done by itself, but you need to have Iraqis to stand up in conjunction with air power. Else we can do what you just suggested people have told you to do. We can wring our hands, throw it up, say it's too hard, sectarian war. Let's walk away from Maliki, walk away from Iraq.
I think that's what we're doing. General, I hope you're right, but I fear that's what we're doing.
Well, I agree. We are. We're on the road to that. I mean, his statement today provided no public support for Maliki. If I was Maliki and I don't have a deal under the table unstated by the president, he's going to call Qasem Soleimani, and he's going to be his military advisor, and they will provide the resources to keep Baghdad viable.
General, thank you very, very much. I always appreciate your insight. Thank you. All right, I'm going to go back to my premise that I started with, the good general, and that is whether the line was drawn in the sand when we erased our line in the sand and our threat to Syria, that if it continued using chemical weapons, that would be a deal breaker, a game changer, and, well, things would change. They didn't. Retired Army Colonel Alan West says that was the start of something. What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I have to concur with the assessment from General Keane in that when the president announced that we were pivoting away from the Middle East, when you follow that up with the lack of action based upon the rhetoric that you're putting out there, you know, one of the things that's perplexing to me, Neil, is that we used our own military resources to help radical Islamist forces in Libya to destabilize that country. But now when we have a nation state that we helped to stand up in Iraq coming to us and asking for support, the president is turning his back against them. And they will be forced along sectarian lines, Maliki is a Shiite, to lean and go towards Iran. And wouldn't it be just a shameful thing that Iran ends up coming in there and being the person that saves the day by stopping this ISIS force when we have all of the capability to do that, but we don't have the will and we don't have a president that wants to do it.
You know, the one thing about you, Curtin, given your service, sir, I mean, you know this region so well, and the sectarian violence and the splinter groups and the fact that this is just a massive, crazy civil war. But a lot of Americans look at the same thing, Colonel, and say, oh, the hell with it. It's not worth it. Let them blow each other up. We've got to just take ourselves out of there. That's a point echoed by the Ron Pauls of the world and a host of others who are pushing this idea. We've got to get ourselves out of all these entanglements. And it's like an isolationism that is building, even within your own party. And I'm wondering, if you find that dangerous, if you find that not surprising, both, what?
Well, I do find it quite dangerous. That sense of isolationism and non-interventionism is quite dangerous because you're dealing with an enemy that is not just looking to control regionally in the Middle East. You're looking at an enemy that wants to export their terrorism. We saw that with the Taliban inviting Al-Qaeda into Afghanistan, providing them a base, and that is what the word Al-Qaeda means. It means the base, and they exported their terrorist activities to the United States of America. Wouldn't it be a shame if all of a sudden this group is the beginning of an Islamist state right there in Iraq, which of course they're going to export that to other countries. And all we have to do is look at some of the people making up this force. You have Western Europeans, you have some Americans that are there fighting with this Islamist group. They're not going to stay there in Iraq. We don't want them to come back to here, but that's a very serious possibility.
Colonel, thank you, sir. I appreciate your service and just having you as a friend and a guest. Alan West.
Absolutely.
All right, what if I told you oil prices are going to surge even more than they have? Now, you always hear this talk, $105, $106, it'll come back down. What if I told you $150 oil? What if I told you $6 gas? You listening? Keep watching.
Monday, Iraq's impact. First, how rising tensions are fueling oil supply fears. Maria's expert gives investors a gauge on opening bell. Then,
we will not be sending U.S. troops.
How the White House should handle the Mideast mess. Varney gets the Beltway buzz from John Barrasso.
Unlimited cash back. Let that phrase sit with you for a second. Unlimited, as in no limits on your hard-earned cash back. As in no more dealing with those rotating categories. The Quicksilver card from Capital One. Unlimited 1.5% cash back on everything you purchase every day. Don't settle for anything less. I'll keep asking. What's in your wallet?